Choo Choo Charles is an indie horror meme game developed by Two Star Games that took the internet by storm in late 2022, with every horror YouTuber under the sun covering it.
Blow people up with a rocket launcher? Oh my god. Oh, whatever.
In the game, you play as a monster hunter who is tasked with taking down an evil spider train named Charles. And with over 10,000 positive reviews on Steam, you might think it deserved its fame, but I'm here to tell you that it doesn't. First up, I want to go over the game's development timeline because I feel like that's where most of the problems start. Choo Choo Charles' first trailer came out in October of 2021 and claimed that the game would be released by early 2022, but the game wouldn't actually release until December of 2022, and that's completely fine. Games, especially indie games, get delayed all the time, and if it's that or a rushed game, I'll take a delay any day. However, my issues start here, as most of the game was made in the year between trailer and release, and it really feels like the game could have used another year to cook, as the content in the game is incredibly dull and repetitive with a shallow gameplay loop. And for those of you that don't know, this game costs $30 Australian, or $21.17 to my cheeseburger lovers, and took me about 2 hours to beat. And that's with me not speedrunning or skipping content, beating every mission, fully upgrading the train, collecting all the paints. And I don't mind a game being short, but the actual content in the game is incredibly repetitive. Missions in Choo Choo Charles are in one of two camps: either walk 30 feet and collect an item, or drive 3 kilometers and collect an item. The game tries to change these up and make them more interesting by changing the places that you go to, but they're all the exact same. Whether you're going into an old barn to get some scraps, or going into a mine to get one of Charles's eggs, all you're doing is fetch quests. And these missions are super easy. Either there is no threat and you get it done in 30 seconds, or you get attacked by cultists that are so unthreatening you can almost out-heal their damage. And speaking of the cultists, when you do get a mission with them, you're expected to stealth through them. However, the stealth is horribly underbaked. Your options for stealth are either to stand behind a wall and use the shittiest lean known to man, or to try to crouch and sneak past them. Except the cultists seem to have eyes in the back of their heads, so I would just run past with no consequences, as they deal virtually no damage, and there's not really anything stopping you. The best kind of missions are the ones that reward you with new weapons you can use when you fight Charles. These missions are more enjoyable as they at least give a reward that isn't scrap, as scrap is so easy to come by it really doesn't feel like a reward. Scrap is so plentiful that I had 60 by the time I finished the game, and I fully upgraded my train. I wasn't even trying to farm scrap, but between missions, the scrap on the ground and the scrap Charles drops, you get plenty. And I'd like to bring up 3 missions in particular that I think are particularly bad. First up is a mission to collect scrap out of a barn. All you do is walk about 20 meters, collect 9 scrap, and leave. That's the whole mission. Number 2 is the swamp mission. This mission's identical to every other fetch quest. There's nothing different, except you need to walk through a swamp really slowly so you don't get killed, and then walk back the same way you came, also really slowly. There's nothing special about this mission. It's just as easy as all the others, it's just slower. It feels like padding. Not even that is enough to get this game above the non-refund threshold. Finally, there's the Slender Man mission. This mission switches up the formula by having you play a shitty copy of Slender Man, but it just isn't fun. The Glasgow Man knockoff can't even kill you, he just teleports you a little bit. And when he does get close to you, it puts all these post-processing effects on your screen that make it really hard to see. And personally, it was just really annoying. I feel like I missed a few pages that I just couldn't see. A million post-processing effects does not make the content better. See?
Elephant green screen effect.
Most missions are also completely optional. If you really wanted to, you could do only the required ones and be done in about 30 minutes. And all the story missions bar the final are the same. You run away from cultists, you get an egg, you leave. All this is to say that the missions are incredibly repetitive and are the only things to do outside of fighting Charles and collecting the paint cans, which most of the time are by the missions anyway. And there's nothing else to do on this island. And speaking of the island, the island looks like shit! Now, I'm not expecting anything crazy. This is a solo project, but there's levels to this shit, man. I was playing this game on high settings, and maybe it was a render distance issue, but the island is so barren. There are times where I'd walk along a path and there were like 5 trees max, and it looks like an unfinished cutscene from a real game you were never meant to get to. The game also lacks a lot of cohesion between its assets, with everything being drag and wood, but there's these random super yellow bridges. The train track, which is like the main part of the game, also just feels chucked in with no thought. The track randomly has chunks of the ground clipping through it, and none of the architecture looks like it was made with a train in mind. There's like a single train station on the entire island. Most of the buildings also aren't anything crazy, they all look the same and have the same interiors. Only a couple have interesting exteriors, like the train junkyard. There is one kind of cool area being a cultist base, but even then, it's the exact same thing, just with a cultist logo painted on it. The environment of the island is also incredibly boring, with the swamp being the only notable change. Everywhere is just slightly hilly plains or forest. There's no variety, and where there are really small changes, it's just a big crevice or a bridge or slightly larger hills. The map is also super barren of any real landmarks. Trying to figure out where you are without the map would be impossible, and I really think the game could have improved with some diegetic directions. Have signs along the railway that tell you the way to certain landmarks, and then if there were actual train stations at each main place, it might actually feel like the train was meant to be there. Charles in this game is a complete non-threat. I think he killed me once on my first playthrough, and that was just bad timing on my part because I got caught out in the woods. 90% of the time when he attacks you, you can just stand under a small wooden shed, and he's now completely incapable of hitting you. And when he does attack you on the train, he is pathetically easy to deter. He only chases you until about half health, where he'll then fuck off, and any small amount of damage he does do to your train can be instantly repaired because he drops scrap, which you need to repair your train. And this is subjective, but he's just not scary. He constantly has this big glowing red aura and a loud train whistle, so he never really sneaks up on you. So most of the time you just watch as he runs up to you and is unable to get to you, or you just shoot him to death. And he's stupid as hell. I had multiple times where he could reach me, but his poor pathing just made him run around in circles. The only really notable thing about him is his design, but 2-Star barely deserves any credit for that, since as he says himself, the design was inspired by animations by Tom Coben.
The design concept, it's mostly inspired by the animations by Tom Coben.
And half the model and animations are just an asset pack.
Animate spider legs myself because that would be very difficult to take a lot of time. I decided to download spider assets to get the actual spider legs themselves because I didn't want to make those. And then I just said, oh hey, here's a spider. And then I said, oh hey, here's Charles. And I just squished them together. And then to actually get the animations right, I downloaded a plugin that would basically automatically make the spider legs move.
And hey, there's nothing wrong with using asset packs, but considering the island itself is also an asset,
Just bought an island asset.
and according to the credits, so were most things, it really makes the game feel closer to an asset flip than an actual game. And speaking of animations, Charles has none. Yes, he has his asset pack walking, but the train part of his body has no animations. Even when he eats a dude, he just slides into his unmoving mouth. And on a larger point about animation, barely anything in this game has any animation. Charles doesn't have any, even though he's the main antagonist. The NPCs around the map don't have any. They just stand there in their same positions and maybe run a little if Charles is near, but they completely lack animation when you talk to them. I'm not asking for full lip syncing, but they couldn't even make them flap their mouths or make them move their heads like they're talking. It makes everyone incredibly uninteresting to talk to, especially the Baron at the very end. He's meant to be the villain who controls the island, and he has no animation. He just stands there and then dies. The characters in general are all so boring. I couldn't tell you a single thing about any of them except for the Pickle Woman, but that is not a positive. They all have slightly different personalities, mainly due to the voice actors who are doing their best for the $7 budget they were probably paid, but all their dialogue is bland and forgettable. And you only see each one twice, once when you accept their mission and once when you turn it in, and since every character only has one mission, you'll never see these characters again, so there's no time to get attached to any of them. And with all of them living in the same bland houses on the same bland environment, there's not even anything to really differentiate them. With the exception of one. The Pickle Woman is a woman who is obsessed with pickles. She feels like a holdover from 2018 style of humor. She's not funny. And that brings me to my next problem. The game is a
big dumb meme game.
and you might think that means that the characters are funny, the game itself has some sort of parody element, or any sort of humor at all, but it doesn't. I sat there dead-faced the entire time. Nothing in this game is humorous or anything. You could say it's reference humor, with Thomas the Tank Engine or Slender Man, but that's the laziest form of humor, and even then it falls flat. And you might say, well, it's not meant to be comedy, it's a horror. Yeah, but it's not scary either, so it just falls flat in both categories. I think a good version of this idea is a game like One Night at Flumpty's, a game that's now the perfect age to start dating its own creator. One Night at Flumpty's took the FNAF 1 gameplay formula and added a comedic spin on it, making it a more lighthearted product that still could be scary at some times, and more importantly, was competently designed. To me, the meme game moniker really just feels like cover. Like, oh, the game's not bad, it just doesn't take itself seriously. Which is a stupid rebuttal. Something can be silly and not take itself seriously, and still be a good game. If you remove the small bits of humor from the game, or change Charles to be a regular monster and not Thomas the creatively bankrupt engine, nothing in the game would meaningfully change. The gameplay loop would still be as repetitive and shallow as before. Now you might be yelling at me that 2-Star updated the game a year later to add more content. And yeah, he did. It's just also not very good.
I'm Nightmare Freddy and I'm in your head. I'm Nightmare Freddy and I'm in your bed.
Nightmare mode is a band-aid fix for all of the problems with this game. None of the actual issues were addressed, besides maybe the difficulty. There's no new actual content here, no new side missions, no new collectibles, nothing. The game is scarier now on account of the brightness slider being dropped by 20%, which made the Slender Man mission even worse, and it's permadeath. I would argue this mode is actually worse, as you are actively discouraged from engaging with one of the main parts of the game, which is fighting Charles. When first starting out, you have 8 minutes to get your bearings and prepare, but even after that, Charles is so tanky and does so much damage that until you have a half-decent stockpile of scrap, he's just not worth dealing with. It's easy to just hide in a base and wait for him to leave, which slows down the game even more. Charles also doesn't drop any scrap, which does help the economy. I actually had to pick and choose what upgrades I got, but it means fighting Charles outside of the final battle is completely pointless. One of the main parts of the gameplay loop is completely removed, and everything else is the exact same. The location of scraps, the paint cans, the missions, the enemy placement. Pretty much the only change is Charles, and it just made him worse. Furthermore, he had a whole year. That's the same amount of time he spent making most of the base game.
For pretty much the entire year that I was working on the game.
And don't even say it's because it was getting ported to consoles, because he said that was outsourced.
I decided to contract Warp Digital to port the game for me.
So there's no excuse for the complete lack of content after an entire year. And of course, the game has since been abandoned, but there's been nothing new since that update in 2023. But that's because he's working on a new game. Yeah? And how did that turn out?
Oh no, bro.
Cuff Busts is The Escapists, but bad. It's got 30 minutes of actual gameplay, and seems like it wasn't playtested at all before release. This shit costs $15, I'm not buying that. You guys can watch gameplay trailers and Astral Spiff. The game is proof that Charles was not a one-time lapse in judgment, more content, or fix a broken and boring game. 2-Star Games simply doesn't care. 2-Star claims that he wants to make games, but seemingly doesn't know how to. At time of recording, Cuff Bust has been out for about 4 months, and there's been absolute radio silence. No updates, no YouTube videos, nothing. And this was a guy that used to post pretty much monthly, so him not posting in 4 months is strange. But of course, there's been 3 paid cosmetic DLCs. Only time will tell if 2-Star is actually planning on fixing this game, but at this point I really think it's too little too late. Now the game does have a map editor, which is cool, but the base amount of content is abysmal.
So there's only one map.
The Escapists has a map editor, but it also has tons of officially made content that doesn't suck. Back to Choo Choo Charles, I really feel like Cuff Bust shows that he didn't actually learn anything from Charles, and in my opinion just got a big head from people liking his undercooked horror game. How else do you explain 3 cosmetic DLCs?
You guys think I sold out already, but you haven't seen the Choo Choo Charles back to school backpacks.
This used to be a joke. Now, I want to say before I wrap up that I don't think 2-Star Games is a horrible person or anything. I just have issues with his content. I'm sure he's a fine guy in person. But this whole thing just annoys me, because as someone who aspires to make things, games included, he was handed a goddamn golden platter of success, and it's been completely wasted. I remember a while ago when the game was first coming out, I saw an interview he did about his game going viral, and at the time, it was cool to see a YouTube indie dev get major mainstream success. It was kind of inspiring. I'm not ashamed to say I was a fan. I had Choo Choo Charles wishlisted from day one. I followed along with the development and stayed to watch his other videos. So that's why I'm so disappointed to have finally played the game all these years later and see the seeming lack of effort on display, and to see what a bunch of people's support led to. If he came back with another game after Charles that was a massive improvement, I would be there cheering and looking back on Charles as just a rough starting point. But months of silence and 3 pre-release DLCs make me not exactly optimistic for the future. All in all, I think Choo Choo Charles is an incredibly boring horror meme game, with no horror or meme to be found. It was overpromised and greatly underprovided, with shallow mechanics and a boring map, all made by a creator that took 0 lessons from its creation and proceeded to squander all goodwill by releasing a shitty cash grab and then abandoning the game. If you're someone that likes Choo Choo Charles, that's fine. There's things to enjoy there. If you enjoy it, great, but this game is not good, and it's just adding another mascot to the burning pile of shit that is mascot horror. You really should have seen this coming when Charles cameoed in Garden of Banban.
Help me!
So like and subscribe, or Choo Choo Charles will expose you for dating a 13-year-old.